So in this case, we have a top floor tenanted property with lots of mould all over the place. There's one clear cause of this mould, made worse by other factors. I'll talk through that first and then talk about mitigating circumstances. So first of all, we should note that the extractor fan switches off immediately, the light switch off, and it should have a 30-minute overrun. And the fan is only going at about 2 or 3 litres per second. It should be 15, and this is the cause.
No ventilation, and it turns off very quickly. I'll see if I can fix it.
So what's happened is the fan has just been directed straight up into insulation, and it's not going out anywhere. It's not being ducted out. My arm's not touching any ducting. It's going on from side to side. I'll have a look on the outside, see what's happening. Ideally, it should go out of the wall, but I mean that may not be possible there because of a lintel, but it may be possible.
So the issue is the fan is being directed onto insulation, which is blocking it from moving properly.
In the loft now, and I can see that this is where the ventilation comes out, so it's not going anywhere. There is that vent hole up here. I mean, so if I fix it, then you'll end up getting a lot of vapor in here and a risk of rot. So I don't propose doing that, but I do recommend at some stage having somebody drill through the wall and having the vent going straight out with a simple pipe, a rigid pipe, not a flexible ducting pipe, with insulation around the pipe. Better not to have a backflow shutter, but instead have flaps on the outside.
So this is looking at the roof above, and there is that vent duct there, which you might be able to use.
There's a dehumidifier for drying clothes, although it's not on. This is apparently a new one or a new one. So did he say a new one is being sent? Or
Yeah, it's literally just arrived. It's down in the...
downstairs. Okay.
Down in the
But the
hallway.
old one doesn't work.
So the Diction extractor fan is just recycling. It does no good at all. This is looking through a thermal imaging camera where blue is colder than red. Not so much insulation above it because of the eaves. There's some heat loss in there, but there has been some form of insulation or timber, something that's insulating the wall. You're going to get heat loss behind cupboards. So cupboards, you get poor airflow, which increases the surface relative humidity. Relative humidity is a measure of air's capacity to hold moisture. So where it is cold, it won't hold as much, so it'll push up the relative humidity to the point where you get mould, which is at 85% relative humidity or more. If we look in the bedroom here, so there's rust. You get rust from condensation, but I understand though these are fairly modern double glazed windows, you're getting condensation there. There's condensation dribble marks just at the top there. I'm going to go downstairs, but it will see more or less the same. That's some mould in here. I assume that's an external wall, but it's the ceiling. Of course, you're getting heat loss in the roof. There is some insulation, but it's not particularly good insulation. Yeah, it's better to have a double ply of insulation. So I'm just going downstairs, and there's mould in the corner here. Just coming in here. So, you can see it actually. Do you see the heat loss there? The reason you get heat loss is because you've got more external surface area in the corners. So increased surface areas means increased heat loss, and mould grows with relative humidity, goes above 85%. It depends on both vapor levels measured by dew point and also temperature. So the colder it is, the higher the relative humidity, which is why you're getting it in the corner. So most of the mould is in that corner and it's been removed by and large, but you can see the signs of it being there in the past. This is using a damp meter where 100% is saturated and below 60 is typically dry. So the 4 things that I want you to do is, one is keep the bathroom door closed and the window open for at least half an hour until the vapour has cleared away from the bathroom. With kitchen, I'd like you to cook with tops on pots and pans as much as possible. And when it's steamy, for instance, when cooking pasta, keep the door closed and the window open so that it doesn't, vapour doesn't travel around the property. The dehumidifier, use it whenever drying clothes and put the dehumidifier near to the drying clothes. Once they're dry, consider putting it into a room that's suffering from vapour problems, or mould. The other thing is, as much as possible, try and move the gap from behind objects where the mould is growing and or insulate. So for instance here, what can happen is vapour moves through diffusion, like smoke. The vapour will get in behind here, but air or heat moves through air currents primarily, and the air currents will be, you'll get reduced air currents because of this. So what happens is the wall behind gets colder, but it's still getting the same amount of vapour, and relative humidity, mould grows to a relative humidity goes above 85% for a long period of time. And if you've got that stale, humid air up against the wall, it's going to remain high for longer, because relative humidity is a measure of air's capacity to hold moisture. So the colder it is, the less capacity, and therefore the same amount of vapour will be relatively higher. So above 85%, and so for instance here, I mean, obviously if you could move it a little bit away from the wall, that will make a big difference. You know, just even putting something slightly behind it, or you could put some insulation, something like wood fibre insulation, very inexpensive. You can get it from B&Q. You know, a few blocks of that will make a big difference. And here, you know, it's so you've got the radiator there, and you just got to think about the movement of air around there. But these are not the root cause of the mould. The root cause is the vapour, the excess vapour. Oh, and the other thing is that once it starts to grow, you want to try and stop it as much as possible. You've got brown mould here. Brown mould grows in lower levels of relative humidity, and that's the heat loss from the roof. I'm going to recommend that the loft is insulated, as well as recommend that the extractor pipe is ducted out properly to the outside. And I would also replace the extractor fan for one which remains on after the lights are switched off, with a 30-minute overrun. So that's basically it. But those are landlord things, and
yeah. I mean, our landlord's great. So.
When it's cold, you'll notice a big difference because it's poorly insulated relative to elsewhere. So you're getting mould here, brown mould, which you get where you have long-term high relative humidity. You're getting it because you've got the water tank immediately above. So if you can probably see that, there's the water tank immediately above that. So you can get, well, I might be able to get some insulation underneath it. The insulation's missing from there. You've got insulation elsewhere, but not immediately underneath there. Well, I'll see if I can move some, see what we can do. But actually, trouble is, if you move it, you're going to have a problem elsewhere, and I don't want to be the cause of a problem. Right, so simple solution: put insulation underneath the cold water tank. Cold water tank will obviously is a body of water which can keep it cold for longer. So one really important rule is to keep the dew point, that's this number here,
Mm-hmm.
which at the moment is showing 15.24. Keep it below the outside temperature. That's the temperature where condensation forms.
Mm-hmm.
And in a well ventilated property, it should never be above the outside temperature. Indeed, it should never be above the outside dew point. But from a pragmatic point of view, just keep that below the outside temperature. You can look up the temperature looking at the Met Office or BBC,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see what the forecast is going to be. But use a dehumidifier and a ventilation to achieve that. These don't have any trickle vents, but what you can do is marginally, if you unlock that, okay, and you have a safety lock so that you can get some ventilation like that. And I would recommend in bedrooms you have it, and wherever you're working from. You'll feel better.
Yeah.
It obviously you get a bit of heat loss, but then you're reducing the vapor level, so it feels better.
Okay.
And on top of that would help. The other thing I say is try wherever possible to keep on top of mould. I know it's easier said than done, but the more you have it, the more it will grow.
So that's on building, that's dry.
I'll go have a look at the other places.
That's dry. That's a bit darker up there.
Oh, yeah. The reason you're getting it here is because the lintel above the windows causes heat loss, increasing the risk of condensation and mould. The new dehumidifiers are removing a capacity of 12 litres, and you can see the different temperatures and so on. I asked ChatGPT for some recommendations or comparative between an extractor fan and a dehumidifier, and according to its calculation, it's cheaper to run a dehumidifier. I would say though the problem with this is very simplistic, and it's assuming that like for like, if you're using an extractor fan in the bathroom where there's high concentrations of vapor, it is better to use the dehumidifier and have it running for 30 minutes for at least 15 litres per second. And dehumidifier for drying clothes and background humidity, and just crack open the vent in the kitchen, in the bedrooms, when you're occupying them. Just a little bit of extra airflow is good. I'll make more specific recommendations in the written report, which will come out in about a week's time. Thank you.